Alright guys, we are back on another Rambler video. So before I get started, make sure you guys like this video, comment, and subscribe. We really want to grow this channel and continue to do more crazy builds like this. We have a lot in store the next few months, so your support will definitely help this channel grow. Alright, so let's jump back into it. We have a 1961 Rambler Classic station wagon that we are putting a C4 Corvette suspension underneath, making a custom frame that we bent, welded together in our shop, and then we are putting it all together to fit the Rambler body and then sticking that underneath the station wagon. So this thing is a sleeper LS powered manual unsuspecting grocery getter that is going to be a ton of fun on the autocross, drag strip, and a bunch of other race stuff that we want to do with it. So if you missed the last episode, we took the entire floor out of a Lincoln Aviator so that we could use the interior to fit our frame into our Rambler. So the width of the Lincoln Aviator floor fit almost perfectly into the footprint of our frame that we made. So in this episode, we are going to figure out how all the interior is going to work, how the footroom is going to work, and how we're going to be able to put this whole thing together. So we designed this entire car in a CAD system called IronCAD, and we used a tool called a ferro arm to be able to measure the entire car, put it into CAD, and then design the car in IronCAD. So this lets us map out how everything is going to fit together before we start welding stuff together. So as you can see, we actually measured all of the Lincoln Aviator seats and then put them where they're supposed to go according to the floor in the Rambler CAD file. And as you can see, our biggest issue that we're concerned with is the transmission is kind of really big and invasive into the cockpit of the Rambler, and our footroom is getting very tight. The way that the Corvette wraps around into our frame is a really tight bend right where your feet would go. So we're kind of struggling to figure out a way that we can have enough clearance for our feet to fit with the clutch, brake, and gas pedal and not interfere with the frame bend. So now that it's a real physical thing that I can sit in and kind of see myself driving in real life, I just have an office chair sitting in there so I can see how the footroom is going to be and see how tight it's actually going to be. The frame luckily is a pretty deep channel, so we can adjust the height of the floor so that it will cover some of the frame and gain us a little bit of footroom.
Alright, finally rolling on the ground. Alright, we have exactly 30 days.
Also, side note, what he's referring to in the 30 days is we had 2 months to build this entire car to get ready for Hot Rod Power Tour, which we ended up actually missing by 2 weeks. So now we just set the floor into the frame so we can see where it's going to sit in the frame, which the width actually looks pretty close, and where we're going to need to trim the floor so it will fit into the frame and be able to be one piece. So now I'm going to fit the cross member up into the frame to see what we need the clearance so the cross member can still fit, and then we're going to start cutting up the floor and get it ready so it can be welded into place. So when the floor was sitting into the frame, we roughly traced out with Sharpie where we need to cut, and so there's a bunch of impact bracing on the bottom of the floor of the Aviator that we had to cut out because it was just going to be too thick for it to fit into our frame. But it was nice to have these braces because it would add a little bit of structure and rigidity to the floor that we didn't have to add if we were to make it from scratch. So I start cutting out some of the bracing and then trim the floor so to get all the jagged edges off of it, so it will fit perfectly into our frame. And then we will stick the floor and tack it into place to see where it's going to fit.
See, that's a little closer. So, checking out the roof clearance with the roll bar so we don't smash our noggin. That's the door bar. That's where the up bar is going for the main hoop. So, all the pedal position and stuff, steering wheel. All that looks pretty good. Back seats recline. Should have enough room behind them here. It's going to be sweet. Got it tacked in. Floor doesn't look terrible underneath. A little lower than what we were planning on, but we didn't know all that structure was under there.
Alright, so you can see we actually cut out a piece of Luan at the water jet, and that allowed us to see our head clearance, where the aviator seats were going to be in the Rambler in accordance to the roof of the Rambler, to see how tight our cage needs to be. It allowed us to see where the steering column was going to go, and also, like I was saying before, our footroom and how that was going to all look. So we got that pretty much mapped out, and then we were able to transfer that to our CAD file and trace our feet and our seating position so that we can see how close everything's going to be. And then once we got that done, we were able to move on to welding the flooring completely. So we ended up putting the entire frame and floor onto a rotisserie, tacked it into place, and then we're able to weld the underside of the car as well as the top side. Installing the frame onto the rotisserie was a little bit of a challenge. We had to weld some bars to brace it on the back, and because there's no place to attach the rotisserie to the back of it. Once we welded that in, it was pretty straightforward, just drilled 2 holes and our rotisserie was mounted. So this was a great tool to use because we could get to everything we needed to really easily and get this thing welded completely. So once we got this thing welded up, we began by measuring our clearance that we're going to need for our transmission tunnel. So our aviator floor is too shallow for our T56 to fit, so we're going to have to cut the entire tunnel out and then give us room to fit our transmission. Alright, so now that the transmission tunnel is clearanced, we have a go to put our motor and transmission into our frame for the first time. So this is an unconventional way of doing it because it's still on the rotisserie, but we need to see how much clearance we're going to need for our transmission tunnel that we're going to make. So for the first time, we're going to lower the transmission and the motor in at one time so we can see how everything's going to line up and see if all of our measurements that we made are correct.
As much of them as we can. All right, so we're going to have to, then we'll just cut vertical one.
I was going to say, if you cut vertical, you'd have more than one.
Yeah.
You could cut, yeah, okay. It fits in the front though.
Yeah.
So now we've come to our first issue that we've had, and it's our oil pan depth. So our CAD file that we used from online was a Camaro LS3 style oil pan, and this was different than our newer Camaro LS1 style oil pan, which is actually an inch deeper. So our cross member in the front with our motor mounts hit would actually interfere, so we had to trim that in order for the motor to sit in properly. As you can see in our CAD file that our oil pan clearance is a lot different in the CAD file than it is in real life, and that is because of the CAD file. The LS is different.
That's like 9. Eight and a half, really.
You see how that tapers out though?
I know, we're going to have to come straight down out here. That's what I was looking at. I saw that in the model. We'll have to come down like that, all the way to the bottom. And then we'll wrap another piece, another 1/4 inch. So we need to be about 10 ideally, and 10 inch straight down.
All right.
Well, 10 for the first time.
Yeah, that thing's pretty, have to brace that up some.
It's not like in the model. I don't think. Well, maybe it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, so yeah, see how this is inside of the transmission? We're running that.
this side.
Super close. It's just super close in there.
That's why it is in the model too. Looks perfect. So we got the motor drop, seat in, shifters in the rear position. We're going to move it to the front position there. So that should be cool. But we had to clear the motor mount cross member that we made, and it's still on the rotisserie. So we can finish welding all this bottom and tunnel and all this. So we had to get this cleared out of here so we could figure out where the tunnel's going to go. You can see the drive shaft right now is going to come out above the floor. I don't know how those Ford engineers pull it off. I guess it's Wi-Fi or something from the transmission to the rear. So Steve's up there making us a new tunnel right now. So should be pretty cool. But there's the motor mounts. And we had the oil pan that was in the model that we got for free offline was off by an inch. That oil pan is 5.5 out of the Camaro, in case anybody wants to know. That LS3 model that's out there is 4.5. So be aware. We really didn't want to drop it. Didn't want to drop the pan anymore, or the cross member any more than where we had it, which gave us an inch for motor clearance. So now we're just going to double up on the bottom with 1/4 inch. So we should only lose a 1/4 inch versus an inch. So it'll be cool. Can make it work.
Alright, so pretty much our frame is done, our floor is installed, and our motor and transmission are installed. So now the next step is to figure out how we're going to make this transmission tunnel and finalize our firewall. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe so we can continue to do really awesome builds like this one. See you on the next one.